Of Gentiles that are mentioned in our scriptures. We just have to look carefully. The first one is pagan Gentiles, and the second one is Israelite Gentiles. The very ones that were prophesied that would go into the nations and become the fullness of the Gentiles. They would walk among the Gentiles, they would lose their identity, and then he would pull them back at the end of time. The second one is Israelite Gentiles. The very ones that were prophesied that would go into the nations and become the fullness of the Gentiles. They would walk among the Gentiles, they would lose their identity, and then he would pull them back at the end of time. Amos chapter 9 verse 9 says, "For look, I will command and I will sift the house of Israel among the Gentiles." That means that they are inside the Gentile homes. Greek Israelites. Pulling this out of the New Testament, John chapter 7. I never read this verse the way that Yeshua gives this verse. It says, "Jesus therefore said, Yet a little while I'm with you, I go to him who sent me. You will seek me, and you will not find me, and where I am, you cannot come." And the response that the disciples are going to give is going to astound you, because they knew something that we don't. And because we don't understand it, we don't even recognize the power of it when he says it. It says it right here. This is their response. "The Jews therefore said among themselves, Where will this man go that we will not find him? Will he go to the dispersion among the Greeks?" Right there, to teach the Greeks. He's not talking about going to the pagan Gentiles. He's saying, will they not go to the house of Israel that's living amongst the Greeks, the dispersion? He's not talking about going to the pagan Gentiles. He's saying, will they not go to the house of Israel that's living amongst the Greeks, the dispersion? Certainly he wouldn't do that. They're unclean. Cornelius. They're unclean. Cornelius.
The Israelite kings of the houses of Judah, Zerah and Phares.
Well, absolutely. We're
Yes.
talking about the dispersion of Israel.
Right,
And
right.
Paul knew that the nations that he went to were all dispersed Israelites.
Yes,
And his letters prove it over again and again.
yes. So that the universalists who want to interpret this phrase, the way it has been translated, and you could say it like this: to bear my name before the nations, which Gentiles they assume means non-Israelites.
Right.
Yeah, okay. And kings, which is another separate group, whoever they might be, and the children of Israel, as if the first two were different from the latter.
Right, but the grammatical construction is called a hendiatrisin, and it means one by means of three. It means that all three of these entities being mentioned are actually the same. The nations and the kings of the sons of Israel is the literal reading.
Yes. Okay, very good. Well, let me finish with verse 16. "For I will show him how great things he must suffer for my name's sake." So for the Paul bashers, these two verses, 15 and 16, are very succinctly declaring that Paul is a chosen vessel.
Absolutely. The Paul bashers are doing us a great disservice.
Yes.
Because these verses not only do that, they prove that Christianity is for only
Right.
the lost sheep of the house of Israel.
Right, because of the bad translation, the universalists have chosen to universalize it, and the Paul bashers agree with them, not understanding the grammar here.
Well, the Paul bashers' biggest mistake is simply taking for granted
Yeah.
that the mainstream translators translated all this properly.
Right.
There are other words besides gentilis that he could have used.
Okay.
But a gentilis indicates somebody of the same race.
Yes.
Not necessarily of the same nation, but of the same race.
Of the same race, exactly.
And there are other words in Latin that denote people of other countries
Yes.
that don't make that distinction.
Okay.
That don't have that connotation.
Right. And the whole world has been fooled by the Jewish redefinition of the word Gentile to mean non-Jew.
And it never did.
And it never did. That's right.
And Paul, the commission here to Paul is to go and bring the name of Christ before both
Yes.
the nations and kings of the sons of Israel.
Aha. Right.
And Paul's epistles prove over and over again, and he does it to the Romans, and he does it to the Corinthians, that they are the dispersed children of Israel.
Right.
And if Paul was going to pervert Christianity, we'd have an epistle of Paul to the Ethiopians, an epistle of Paul to the Egyptians,
The black
an
people.
epistle of Paul to the Hutus and the Tutsis.
Right.
We don't have that. Arabs. There's
Right.
no epistle of Paul to the Babylonians.
Exactly.
There's no epistle of Paul to the Edomites.
You're right.
Paul
Right.
could have very easily perverted Christianity.
Right. And
The Paul bashers are just idiots for not seeing that.
And of course, in other books, Paul definitely says that the Edomites are vessels fit for destruction.
Of destruction, right.
He does not include them among the Israelites.
And he doesn't include any nation that's non-Israelite.
Right.
Every one of those people Paul wrote an epistle to were dispersed Israelites.
Right.